Just remember that the mind is neuroplastic, which means it can be molded and shaped and shifted and changed and transformed. Doesn't matter who you are, it can be transformed. And so you can often see this and apply this to your life. What do you want to change about yourself? What changes do you fear? What are you over-identifying with? You know, it's about learning about yourself, and that is the power of the mind. Consciousness is able to understand itself through the reflection in the mirror and through the reflection of other people. Hey guys, Mason here with Soul Shift Insight, back with another video. Today we're just taking a nice hike in the forest. So I want to start off with a little story. When I was in grade school, we had a computer class that I was taking, and this was the first time I was being taught how to use the keyboard. And I remember them trying to teach us how to use the keyboard without looking down at the keyboard. So they'd put this cover on the keyboard, and we had a whole test, and we were supposed to know what we were typing without seeing the letters. And dude, I failed that fucking test all the time. That whole lesson, it overwhelmed the shit out of me, because I guess just at the time, seeing all those different letters and numbers, it was just overwhelming. But flash forward probably like a whole decade at this point, maybe a little bit more, and I can use a keyboard without looking down. And I realized this last night. I was writing on my computer. Sorry, I'm having to cross some mud on this path. We just had a huge storm last night. But I said, fuck it, we ball. That's my new life motto, by the way. Fuck it, we ball. It's like, you know, my mind always likes to make excuses. So I'm like, all right, let's just do it. So I came here. But yeah, so the whole topic is, you know, we learn things automatically over time, right? And we often underestimate how much we actually know. So there's a few parts of the brain. There's the conscious part of the brain, and then there's the subconscious, and then there's the unconscious, right? So the subconscious can be kind of compared to the bottom part of an iceberg, the part of the iceberg that is underwater, right? And so that's the biggest part of the iceberg. That's how the iceberg is able to balance itself, right? So that part of the iceberg, the biggest part, is the subconscious mind. And that's where a lot of information gets stored that we don't even realize we were able to retain, or, you know, that information was absorbed, that knowledge. I used to doubt myself. I used to think I was so stupid. And I mean, we all have our own levels of consciousness. So, you know, there are things that I will never be as good at as other people. We all have strengths and weaknesses. And I can recognize when I'm, when I'm not good at something, or if that's just not my strength and I'm weak at it or whatever. You know, I'm not gonna try to, you know, inflate my ego and say that I'm good at everything. But, you know, there's things that we're good at, there's things that we're not. But I used to have this low self-esteem with a lot of things in my life, because I just felt stupid, and I felt like I couldn't do these things. And lo and behold, you know, repetitive tasks have sunk into my brain without me even realizing it, and I am typing on a computer without even looking at the keyboard. And I'm like, damn. I mean, it's just like a perfect example. Fucking mud. You know, it's a perfect example of this. And also we can use driving as an example, because once you drive for so many years, a lot of processes and systems, they're just automatic. You don't even think about it. We often learn things automatically over time. And so, it's a good moment to think about what parts of yourself have you doubted its capabilities, and that part of yourself being actually more capable now than you realize. So the things that run autopilot in our mind can create a wonderful life for us, or it can create a very ordinary life for us, or it can create, a miserable life for us. So I say all this because we have to realize the deeper threads that sew the fabric of our reality, our life. And I'm talking about our individual lives. Yes, our choices and our actions affect this, but also what's happening in the subconscious mind is going to repeat itself, and this is going to manifest as reoccurring patterns in your life. And so becoming aware of that, those patterns, those thoughts, those beliefs, those ideas, those emotions, it's all stored within the subconscious mind. The mind is not, we should not underestimate the power of the mind. The mind is super powerful, and it can become the greatest tool that we have. We can temper the mind like we temper a blade. We can sharpen it. It's not something that's going to stay, in a default setting forever, unless you just don't, exercise your brain. But so my point with all this is, it's like, never underestimate the power of the mind, and never underestimate also what lingers in the depths of your mind, because what lingers in the depths of your mind can also it can often chain us down, right? Like I was saying earlier, these lies I believed about myself, such as, I was stupid, or that, I just couldn't do things, or I can't, be confident, or, what, I had low self-esteem for many years. Whatever it is, they're just illusions of the mind. So don't underestimate what lingers within your mind too. And that's why I bring up the subconscious, because that's the part of your mind that contains those lingering little things and little nasty things. They're not all nasty, they're all just messages, and you have to realize what's there for you to see, so that you can process it and you can grow from it. But Alan Watts, he says something that has always stuck with me throughout the years. I read a book about, it's called, what's the book called? Out of Your Mind by Alan Watts. I think that's what it's called. And he talks about how the mind is a useful servant, but a bad master. And it's such a great quote, because it's true. The mind is like your hands, like it's a tool. Your hands are tools for you to be able to do whatever you got to do. And so is the mind. But it should not be your master. Because when the mind becomes your master, you become chained by the things that you're overly attached to. And so back to what I was saying about these lingering things within the subconscious mind. These things can, if not faced properly, it can become, this like part of yourself that you have a hard time understanding or processing or even feeling into. And what happens is you either disassociate from it, or you also go the opposite route and you overly attach to whatever it is. So life is about walking the middle path. And it's about seeing these things, but not denying them, not blocking them out, but not also like overly attaching to them. So there's that balance kind of that you have to walk, a little tightrope. people often get overly attached to their identity, to their ego. And a part of what the ego is developed from is these lingering things within the mind. And this can limit you in big ways from seeing from a higher perspective or actualizing your own capabilities and, dreams that you have, goals that you want to do, things that you want to do in life, but sometimes you feel like you can't do them. And those parts of your brain, you have to sit with it and see it. And I want to just add to this that if you're in the chapter of your life where you are finding yourself, in other words, you don't know who you are completely, this is actually an advantage. The reason it's an advantage is because as you get older, it is much harder to change and to adapt, because these patterns, they kind of become solidified as you get older. Not to say that you can't change as an old person, not to say that you can't change as an old person, because you absolutely can, but it's like double or triple the work sometimes just to transform these parts of ourselves, So if you're younger, you feel empty, maybe you don't know who you are, it's actually a good thing. I was watching this show once, and this guy in the show said that it's actually an advantage to be empty sometimes, because then you have the opportunity to fill yourself up with the good things and the bad things, but you have a choice. A lot of older people, they've chosen a long time ago to overly attach themselves to these parts of themselves, and so their ego is so, God, it's like a brick wall. You're talking to a brick wall sometimes, right? And it's just important to realize the power of the mind, the powering of these limiting beliefs, the power of old stories that we tell ourselves that aren't true. Because if turned to the right mind, to the right way of thinking, to the right way of being, if you transform yourself, your mind becomes your greatest tool, becomes your greatest servant. So that also kind of brings up the thought, well, if the mind is the greatest servant, what is the master? The master is always your heart. You have to lead with your heart. That's a no-brainer, but if you do lead with your mind instead of your heart, you become egocentric, you become a control freak, you lose the capabilities of letting go in real time, you take personally what you shouldn't, and you overly attach yourself to lies and delusions of the mind. So this is a very important thing, very important chapter that we all go through at some point in our lives, as we have to face these deep aspects of our psyche. The mind is so powerful. I have had so many limiting beliefs myself, such as that I'm not good enough. And that is something in the past couple of years I've been healing. And part of the process of healing that limiting belief I had about myself was facing where that came from, first of all. Because, when we come into this world, we're all coming into this world in a pure slate. We're all pure when we come into this world. And then we learn a bunch of shit. We absorb a bunch of things from people around us. And so the way I was able to process, and still processing, sometimes it comes up, not feeling good enough, this is an example, is it's just a daily practice, right? Daily practices help ground me, and daily practices that make me feel present. You know, when I say present, I mean like not just present with the work at hand, but present with myself. You know, so meditation's helped me, but it doesn't for everybody, and I understand that. Though it probably could if people gave it time. That's just another point that I like to make, is that time is on your side. You know, when we start out on our journeys, we think that time is against us, that we're running against the clock. And to some extent we are, but as you go on in life, you realize that time is your best friend, and it's there, right there every day. You know, like for instance, me not believing that I could type on a keyboard without, you know, looking down. As time has gone on, I didn't even realize that I was so good at typing on a keyboard without looking down. So it's just one of those things where repetition, or just moving through life without trying to force change, but organically moving through life, where you're allowing this change to happen organically. You know, it's about living in flow, living in a flow state. And sometimes life calls for us to push through things, but even in those hard times, I challenge you to realize that even in those hard times, we can level ourselves in a sense of flow. It's about living in a flow state. And to live in a flow state on a daily basis, you know, it's about letting go of resistance to whatever is the moment, you know. And sometimes the moment can be difficult, most times. So it's just about letting go of resistance and going with the flow. And also I'd like to add that do not over-identify with things, because this can lead to self-deception. We often cling to labels as a form of cope, because the ego wants to stay comfortable with what it understands itself to be. You know, one of the greatest fears of mankind is the fear of the unknown. So the unknown aspects of ourselves is just off limits. But I invite you to be courageous enough to confront those parts of yourself, because that is the dragon that is protecting the gold within you, dude. It's like, so, you know, if you watch The Hobbit, let me use The Hobbit as an example. You know, Bilbo goes into the mountain to face the dragon, and the dragon, he protects some sort of, you know, precious artifact, like a golden egg or something. I forgot what it was called, but and then he protects all the gold too, which the dwarves are after. So you have to face the dragon to get the gold. We often not only use labels as a form of cope, we use societal structures, we use religions, we use organizations, we use social movements, whatever it is, or maybe we use some sort of typology like astrology or numerology or, you know, personality type. These things can be helpful in understanding patterns, but when you overly attach to these things too, it can sink in your mind like a worm and become this limiting belief. You know, for example, you know, I was in astrology for many years, and I still dabble in it a little bit. I don't disbelieve it. But the thing is with astrology is it can also be extremely limiting. It tells you these things about yourself, and they're true, but then it almost makes you feel like you can't be out of that. So, you know, part of my job here is to let you know that anything you think you can't be, you already are, first of all, and you're 100% capable of realizing that about yourself. So, like, you know, I'm a Capricorn, and all they say about Capricorns is that we're hardworking. And there's often this like stigma about Capricorns that we're boring people. I'm not a boring person if you get to know me. This cool little map. Yeah, I'm not a boring person if you get to know me, but the thing is, I am a hard worker, and I take my work seriously. So, yeah, we use these labels, we use these institutions, these organizations, these religions, these doctrines, these typologies. We use them all to help us cope and form a sense of identity, you know. And that's great and all, but you're more than that. You're always more than that. Do not let the worms of self-deception get deep into your mind to the point where you live in disillusionment about yourself and others. Because this is dangerous. This is dangerous for many reasons. And many reasons I've already expressed. Jesus, I'm on a trail that I don't think has been tread for a long time. So I'm in this freaking cool ass park that I found near my house that I was unaware of. It has this cool trail through the forest and like miles of trails. And part of the trail is called Dagobah. So I thought, you know what? I want to go to Dagobah. If you're a Star Wars fan, you know what I'm talking about. Face my darkness. It's actually with the theme of this video, so face your fears, young Padawan. But yes, do not let the worms of self-deception get further entrenched in your mind. Free yourself from these limiting aspects. You are more than this. You're more than capable. And so, also a part of the society we live in is keeping people disempowered. Let's be real. Almost everywhere you see, we are being taught that we ain't shit. Now, we all have things to learn, and in the eyes of the Most High, the creator of all things, we do have a lot to learn. We always have things to learn. But that does not take away from our own capabilities and our own power. So, whatever things society tells you to disempower you, fuck all that. More than that, you know that. You know that deep down, but you let these institutions, these religions, these organizations, these social movements, you let what they say get to you. Stop that. Dude, I don't even know where I'm going, but I'm going somewhere. And that's kind of where you have to get to in your life is that, there's a plan, there's a process, and you got to trust the process. But you got to be open to the mystery, as somebody told me once. Another point I'd like to make is that don't assume you know everything about someone. Because much like how we like to over-identify with ourselves, we also like to over-identify with other people in the sense that we think we know who they are, and then we lose the curiosity about who they actually are. So this process of becoming is about remaining open and remaining curious. I promise you people will appreciate that. Do not let delusion of the mind become a worm in your brain, okay? Because we often do this because we're over-attaching to things. We're over-attaching to a sense of identity and what we want to believe true about ourselves. And maybe you know who you are, maybe you don't. If you don't, I'm saying that this is for you. That's what this message is for. Just allow the process to happen, man. It's gonna take years. You might go on social media and think you gotta be this certain person. And, if you don't become this certain person, then you're worthless. I think we all kind of go through this at this point in life. And, it's just about also maintaining a detachment when it comes to social media and all these influencers and what you see them doing or what they say you should do with your life. Even me, think for yourself. Find what's good for you. I'm never going to tell you need to do this or or you're fucked and you're going to hell, or you're gonna have a miserable life if you don't do these certain things. We're all made differently, and that diversity is important for our growth. Even in nature, without diversity, things begin to stagnate. Just remember that the mind is neuroplastic, which means it can be molded and shaped and shifted and changed and transformed. It doesn't matter who you are, it can be transformed. And so you can often see this and apply this to your life. What do you want to change about yourself? What changes do you fear? What are you over-identifying with? You know, it's about learning about yourself, and that is the power of the mind. Consciousness is able to understand itself through the reflection in the mirror and through the reflection of other people. We in Dagobah, baby. Just found me some mushrooms. Not the psychedelic kind, but edible kind. Shit. Fuck. Oh man. I just dropped it. These are chanterelle mushrooms, I believe. I just dropped it, but I found a bunch of them. They're still kind of growing, so I'm gonna leave them. But this was a big one. You can cook these and eat these. The way you can tell that they're chanterelles are these little gills on the side. I found another cluster of chanterelle mushrooms. They're still kind of growing, as you can see. But if I come back in probably maybe a day, they'll be bigger. You have to realize that the mind also creates fear. There's a difference between the fear that you feel from something that's in your direct environment right now, and then fear that your mind creates. They call this perceived fears. It's a part of the monkey mind that likes to just create stories, and this is another power of the mind. And the culture we live in today is a very stagnant culture. As we become more technologically advanced, we become more emotionally disadvanced. You know what I'm saying? So, and the reason I say that is because as we spend more time absorbed in technology, we spend less time being present with these parts of our mind. We have to be present with these perceived fears. And we just have to see it, that's all. It's really not that hard. If you could see it, if you could be mindful and aware of it, then you are at a level of detachment, you're at a level of consciousness where it's not gonna have power over you, and it's not gonna take shape in your reality and manifest as much as if you were fully in the trenches and you were down bad and you were completely given in to the illusions of the mind and these perceived fears. In which case, if you fully believe in them, then you're gonna fully see them in your life, And I meant to bring this up earlier, but this happens because when we are over-attached to these parts of our brain and these fears or whatever it is, maybe it's these limiting beliefs, maybe it's these stories, when we're over-attached to them, we start seeing everything in our reality to confirm that bias. And that point can be applied to many things in life. I've noticed as I've walked a spiritual path more and more throughout the years, I've noticed this thing within the community, the culture, the spiritual culture, is that people just kind of choose to confirm their own bias and not, test those things within their mind. You have to, it's like the scientific method. You gotta put it to the test. If it's real, it's real. But if it's not real, and you're just trying to, you're reaching for it to be real, and you're just trying to confirm your bias. And this is another part of the power of the mind. You have to be careful of this. For instance, I was walking through the forest earlier. I'm like, what if a bear just jumps out of nowhere? That is a possibility, but it's also a perceived fear because the bear is not in my environment right now. So, you know, I was able to detach from that fear and see it as something that is not present at the moment. You know, it's an important part of the job, man. You gotta, and that's how you go with the flow, is being able to detach from the mind and to live in the moment. And you'll hear, I'm not the first person to say any of these things, but these are important pieces of insight for my life right now, you know. And Jesus, you know, I've been told this stuff many times from other people, and you know, you hear it and you're like, okay, and then, but it takes time for that seed to grow and for you to fully integrate that understanding, you know. That's why I say time is your friend, because over time you will evolve and you will grow and you won't even realize that you're doing it. It'll be all automatic, and it's just fucking amazing how it's like that, you know. For instance, here's another example. I'll use this. It's gonna be a long video, but as I keep going and walking, it's almost like more thoughts are coming up. So, for instance, one of my limiting beliefs that I've struggled with for a long time is that I have to essentially, because this is sort of something that comes from the boomer generation, you know, and it just got passed down to the Gen X, and it got passed down to the millennials, and it got passed down to the Gen Z, and now to the alpha, you know, if we're looking at all the generations. And, you know, it probably didn't start with the boomers, but what I'm talking about is this idea that you have to struggle so hard, you know, the idea that, oh Lord, oh dude, I don't know where I'm at. I'm a little lost right now. Anyways, I'm gonna sit here for a second and finish my thought. So the idea that you have to pull up by your bootstraps and you have to just knuckle up and endure, you know, preposterous amounts of hardship. You know, this is a limiting belief that has been instilled in us. Now, yes, life takes hard work, but oftentimes the hard work is more in our mind than it is in reality. Things are a lot easier in reality than we think. So the mind creates this resistance, which makes it appear hard, but in reality, whatever we have to do is not as hard as we think. That's what I'm talking about. So, you know, the boomers, you know, they were raised after World War II, so, you know, there was a lot of rebuilding after that, and so maybe deeply instilled in them that they just had to knuckle under the pressure of society to get things right. And perhaps they did, but we're at a point now. God, it's plane. Fuck you, plane. You're interrupting my videos. This is like the 20th time. Dude, check this out. So I'm walking down this path, right? And I've come to a three-way. This way says wrong way, and then this say wrong way too. And I'm like, well, which way do I go? You know, this way has the little hiker's emblem on it, so I might go that way because I'm not bicycling. But even if you were bicycling, how would you go up that? We're just gonna go this way. So yeah, man, it's just about understanding the present moment is not as hard as you think it is, and the things that you want to do with your life aren't as hard as you're making them out to be. This is something I struggle with all the time. This is the limiting belief that things just have to be super hard, and I'm just gonna suffer under this suffocating pressure to get my dreams realized. And there's a little bit of that, but it's not that hard. It's not as hard as my mind makes it out to be. It's just about laying one brick at a time. But yeah, that is the video. I've said pretty much everything I need to say. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll catch you guys next week with another video. Heed my words, it's important.